Welcome to another edition of The Voice of Palestine. It's March 31st, 2013. It's Easter Sunday, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week we'll be talking with Reverend Robert Assali, Chair of the Canadian Friends of Sabeel, about their recent statement calling on the new Canadian Office of Religious Freedom to investigate Israeli abuses during the Holy Week. We'll also discuss the Kairos Bethlehem call, Here We Stand, Stand With Us. Good evening to you, Reverend Assali, and it's my pleasure to have you on the Voice of Palestine.
It's an honor to be with you this evening.
Yeah. Reverend, could you tell us a bit, maybe for our listeners, about the Canadian Friends of Sabeel and, when it was established and what's the objectives, really, of the Canadian Friends of Sabeel?
Sure. Sabeel itself is an organization based in Jerusalem with offices in various parts of Palestine, and their mission is to help Palestinian Christians understand the Bible and understand how their faith applies to their daily situation, especially the difficulties of dispossession, because the Bible has been so misused by Western Christians to try and justify Palestinian dispossession, and it's been very confusing for Palestinian Christians until Sabeel came along 20 years ago and started working with the local community to try and both understand and explain this. And Canadian Friends of Sabeel was started 15 years ago actually, when in Ottawa a bishop of the Anglican Church of Canada had made a statement, having just come back from Bethlehem, and was scandalized by the treatment of Palestinians by the Israeli military. He came back and somehow made headlines in the Ottawa Citizen with his Christmas sermon. It was, I think, Bishop slams Israel's evil, and that made a lot of noise. So he called a conference in Ottawa to look at the situation in Palestine and Israel, and out of that was born the Canadian Friends of Sabeel. Many people decided that there should be a Canadian branch alongside the American branch, and since then there are branches all over the world, in Ireland, in the UK, and several in Scandinavia, Germany, France, Australia, South Africa, India, and so on. So the Friends of Sabeel is now an international movement.
And it's really important to show also that the Christian Palestinians are really not discriminated against by Muslims, like some of these Christian fanatics here claim, or actually not just Christian fanatics, even some Congress people in the U.S. claim that this is the problem, and this is why the Palestinian Christians are leaving the Holy Land, because of the discrimination against them by the Muslim Palestinians, which is really utter nonsense, because I always give an example myself. I am from Bethlehem, and although they gave Bethlehem back to the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Authority is not against me going back. It's the Israelis that are not allowing me to go back and live in my hometown, although I have deeds for property in Bethlehem. I have it with me here in Canada.
Yeah, well, the attacks really in the West on Palestinians are so vociferous especially any time Israel commits misdeeds, that when they're against the Christians, they like to blame the Muslims to divert attention away from what Israel is doing. And I'm guessing that this statement that Canadian Friends of Sabeel issued on Good Friday about the restrictions placed on Palestinian Christians and the inability to come to Jerusalem for the Holy Week celebrations and observances will somehow be met with accusations from the staunch defenders of Israel that the Muslims had something to do with this. I can't imagine what inventions there will be in people's minds, but there will be inventions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple freedom of religion. Even people from Bethlehem, can go celebrate Easter in Jerusalem. Usually, before the occupation, I was there in Bethlehem. People used to go all the time to Jerusalem. It's it's the center of life, whether religious, educational, and other aspects. So people used to go work even in Jerusalem. And
well, for us, it's a shame at several levels, and it's so sad. One of the Easter traditions on the Orthodox Easter, which is coming up this year in a month, that it is so central to our heart, is that the holy fire is lit in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, in the Church of the Resurrection, and it appears miraculously. And this happens every year. This has been happening for nearly 2,000 years now. And the times that I was there, it was this basilica, which itself dates back to the 4th century, was packed, and everybody's holding a vigil candle, and all of a sudden these candles are lit, and it's like a flame going through. And then every year, there are people lined up through the old city and lighting each other's candles, and it passes quickly down. And sometimes there were enough people all the way down to Bethlehem for it to spread. Other times they would take it in a car and spread it in Bethlehem. But now you can't do that because of the wall, because of all the restrictions. The Bethlehemites can't come to Jerusalem to celebrate, and the fire can't go down to Bethlehem. But even worse, which was very, very sad when we were there, during Christmas, the celebrations are ruined every year by the military. When we were there in the early and mid-90s, I only went to Bethlehem once for Christmas, and I would never go back after this, because we went down to the church for the midnight mass, and there was hardly anybody in Manger Square, because the Israelis had put all of Bethlehem under curfew, and most of the pilgrims coming in from the west had no idea. But I had a colleague who worked in my office with me at the Middle East Council of Churches, who lived less than 100 meters from the Church of the Nativity, and he was supposed to meet me there, and it turns out he couldn't, and I found out why. He was under curfew like all the other Palestinian Christians and Muslims, and I went down and I went past the checkpoint. The streets were completely vacated because they were under curfew in the dark. I could only talk to him through his window, and what a shame that I, as a Westerner, because I have a Canadian passport, can go to the Church of the Nativity, and the people who have kept the faith alive in Bethlehem, like you, cannot go if the Israelis say you cannot go.
Yeah. And they're not letting anybody except, actually it's ironic, the only one they let are the people who carried the guns against them with Arafat, which is really ironic. Maybe we should carry guns. Anyway, really, Reverend Assali, I was really disturbed when you told me, because I didn't know that. I'm from Bethlehem, that the Nur, we call it Nur, the light,
yes,
can go to Bethlehem. You know, that's really sacrilege. That's outrageous, because, you know, every year the patriarch used, the Orthodox patriarch used to come to Bethlehem with the Nur, with the light, you know.
yes.
And that's really outrageous. I didn't know that. That's something I'm not aware of. That's
well, no, I mean, he has to pass through a checkpoint. He has to get past the wall. Everything.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
And
you know, and the notion that there is religious freedom. This myth needs to be exposed, and what's behind it needs to be exposed, because, of course, it's not just religious freedoms that are violated. It's every kind of freedom of movement that Palestinians and every other person on earth has a right to enjoy, all because of the military occupation and the brutality of the occupation, which the Israelis are trying to hide, and needs to be exposed to the general public in the West.
I think so, and really what's covering up all these atrocities and practices of the Israelis are, you know, the media and the governments here in North America, whether in the U.S. or in Canada, and they are a hindrance to for showing what Israel is to the Canadian public and to the American public. So
well, we'll have to see this week now, because our statement came out, of course, on Good Friday, which is a holiday, and after Easter, or tomorrow, Easter Monday, the government is open again, and this is a real opportunity if the government is serious about this office of religious freedom, if the government is at all serious in peace, all serious about peace, at all serious about justice, at all serious about truth and integrity. We'll see now what they have to say about our call that the Office of Religious Freedom, in fulfillment of its mandate, speak to this violation of international law, violation of religious freedom, which happened this week. I mean, it's not new. This happens every year during Holy Week and Easter, and it's threatened again in a month for the Eastern Orthodox Holy Week and Easter, where, you know, not even Boy Scout bands and Girl Scouts can come to Jerusalem for the parades that are scheduled, for the Palm Sunday procession. You know, I mean, imagine, you know, Mr. Harper went to see these pandas in panda bears in Toronto, and coincidentally, the band that was there was from the Hillcrest High School in Ottawa. It went to Toronto, won a contest, and Hillcrest is the high school that I went to 30 or 40 years ago. I mean, imagine if they had won this contest and they were told you can't go because a foreign government doesn't want you there. You know, this is unthinkable in Canada, and it's a regular occurrence in Palestine.
Yeah, you know, could you give us just some background about this new Canadian Office of Religious Freedom? I think I heard about it, but I'm cynical, really. You know, to come from Harper government and his cronies made me think, you know, this is you know, nonsense. But I really appreciate that you are taking them to task about this issue, because, you know, they support, as you know, Baird speech at APEC was very clear where he stands, and the same with Harper. They say it's not them. Also, the liberals said that Canadian-Israel values is Canadian values, which is really nonsense. If you know, because there is no equality in Israel, and they don't treat, like you mentioned, they don't treat different religious sects in a discriminatory manner, you know. So could you tell?
Sure. Last year, when the churches heard about this office being set up, some of them wrote to the minister to find out what it was all about, and it was very vague. So all we know really is what was announced when the ambassador, I think they call him, for the office was appointed about a month ago, and he seems to be he seems to be a reasonable appointment. And what is on the Office of Religious Freedom's site, there isn't that much, but it does come under the Foreign Ministry, which of course is Mr. Baird, and he's traveling very shortly to Israel. He just announced this on Thursday or Friday that he's going to Israel. So it comes under his control. We all know what his views are towards Palestinians and Arabs. Not very friendly, because they seem to get in the way of Israel's expansion. But this is an opportunity both to test the office and hopefully it's not just another political game, but something that can be fulfill its stated purpose. And its stated purposes are very clear: to promote democracy, to stand against any violations of religious freedom and the most egregious violations. And often, of course, the situation in the occupied territories is not painted as one of a religious problem, but we can look at that in a minute. Certainly, the office's mandate includes upholding human rights and international law, and this is such a classic case, and it arose in the news about Christians being prevented from going to Holy Week services this week. So here's an opportunity with the minister going to Israel to see what he will say about this through the Office of Religious Freedom. And we have asked very clearly for the office to report in time for the minister's visit, and for the minister to take Israel to task and demand an end to all restrictions that prevent Palestinians from living normal lives in the West Bank and Gaza before the Orthodox Easter. And so some will argue, and I don't expect this from the Minister of Religious Affairs, but some will argue, well, it's not really a religious problem. But that's impossible to argue when you have settlements, for instance, in the West Bank, they're not Israeli settlements, they're Jewish settlements. And I think it's very important to be clear about that. You don't have to be an Israeli to live in the settlements. In fact, Palestinian Israelis can't live in the settlements. Only Jewish Israelis can, and non-Israelis who are Jews from the United States and Australia and all kinds of places. When we were there, met many American Jewish settlers and some Canadian Jewish settlers who didn't have Israeli citizenship, and they have their own roads now that have virtually destroyed the West Bank, destroyed the territorial integrity of the West Bank. They can zip into Jerusalem from the Ramallah area in 20-25 minutes, whereas Christians and Muslims coming from Ramallah get stopped at the wall, and often that's as far as they can go and cannot get into their own city.
Yeah.
They can't get into their own city because it's divided by this separation wall, and of course the word in Dutch for separation is apartheid.
Yeah, and really, they have Jewish-only roads, these settlers, that nobody else is allowed on them except these settlers, these legal settlers. And not to also mention, not to forget that, these settlements are really legal, not just according to United Nations resolution, but according to the 4 Geneva Convention. The 4 Geneva Convention doesn't allow the occupying power to transfer its population to the occupied areas.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And not only have they transferred the population, but they've disrupted the life of Palestinians. I mean, these Jewish-only roads carve up the map of the West Bank is like a spider web with Jewish-only roads overlaid on top, and Palestinian roads are broken up, non-functional. I mean, road number 60, which used to be the main north-south road that went from Hebron to Bethlehem to Jerusalem to Ramallah to Nablus and so on, right up to the Galilee, now is cut in 4 places just between Jerusalem and Jalah's own camp, a little bit north of Ramallah. It's impossible. I mean, it's absolutely impossible for Palestinians to travel because they're carved up by these Jewish-only roads.
Yeah, actually, there was a report today. I don't know if you've seen it. It said that only out of the public land in the West Bank, only 0.7%, which is less than 1%, was given to the Palestinians and the certain Palestinians, not all Palestinians, and 38% of the occupied territories in the West Bank went to the settlers.
It's absolutely remarkable, and it's not just the 38%. But when you look at it, I mean, you've got the whole Judean wilderness there, which is pretty useless, right? It's 38% of the best land. It's 38%, which is the best land, which is 80-90% of the best land. 38% of all the land, if you include the useless land like the wilderness.
Yeah. And this came out, I think, in a court. They exposed them because some people asked for them to show the figures, and that's what came out today. It's really outrageous. And then the Canadian government officially is against the occupation, and the American government is also against the occupation, and they don't recognize it, although they maintain financing this occupation. It's hypocrisy, isn't it, Reverend Assali?
Well,
they say something and do something else.
It's worse than hypocrisy. I mean, Obama just made a trip there, and what came out of it was nothing positive for any hopes for peace and so on. He maybe made some friends in Israel, some new friends, which he thinks he needs politically back home. But even he said that the settlements were problematic and that the settlers had no right to treat Palestinians this way and so on. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change anything. And so we'll see now when Mr. Baird goes what he has to say, and especially in light of the very current violations of international law.
I'm not holding my breath about Baird because, I don't know. I think he said a statement just last year. He was addressing the Jewish National Fund, and in it, which was really outrageous. I don't know if it's ignorance or he just lying, outright lying, because he said the Jewish National Fund benefits all the citizens, including Christians and Muslims, which is really outrageous. I don't know if you hear that when he addressed.
Well, but he just he gets these propaganda points from the Israel lobby here in Canada, 3 or 4 bullets, and he doesn't think about them. He just reads them off and happily buys them hook, line, and sinker. It's very, very sad. Very sad.
It is very sad because
and I can tell you how sad it is from a Canadian perspective. We lived there 20 years ago. I have 2 children that were born in Jerusalem. So we have a certain love for the place. And when we were there, as Canadians, doors were open everywhere to us. I mean, people were so delighted because Canada at least had an even-handed policy. Now we're embarrassed to show our Canadian passports over there. I mean, the current government in Canada has brought great shame and disgrace to the reputation of Canada throughout the Middle East. And this government won't be around forever. But if other governments come with a more even-handed policy, or this government somehow changes its mind and has a more even-handed policy, it will still take years, maybe decades, to repair the damage to Canada's reputation abroad. And this is a very hard one a reputation through diplomacy, a reputation that we actually cared about all peoples and cared about peace, but no more.
Yeah, I don't know really. I disagree with you because previous governments, they knew how to hide their real situation. It always go all the way back to Lester Pearson in 47. But the Canadian governments always were not even-handed. They would say something and do something else. They always supported Israel. But this is another topic. I think we may as well go to the Palestinian Christian call. There is the Kairos Bethlehem call that says, the title of it here, we stand with us. We were really, when it was issued, we were really hopeful that the Western churches will take really a stand with the Palestinian. But, aside from individual churches, even some of them, they'll take a position, but they'll cover, their behinds. Excuse me for saying that, but that's what really they do, because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to be called anti-Semites. And this is really a problem, because the Kairos Palestine, in their Bethlehem call, they were very clear that the churches should support us by adopting the BDS movement. Can you tell us from your perspective and from the church that you're with, you are from the Anglican Church, is there any positive response to this call? Maybe I'm cynical, as I told you, but you could correct me.
Well, there's actually, Hannah, a very positive response. What happened in response to this call in the United States is that a Kairos USA group started to form, and it's very broad and becoming very influential in the churches. And in Canada, Canadian Friends of Sabeel, in response to this call, called together all the CROs, the Christian-related organizations, and the churches for a meeting on how to respond. And since then, we've met every 6 months, and these are all the Middle East staff people of the Canadian churches and Canadian church-related organizations. We have regular meetings, and we take actions. Out of this, to a certain degree, came the United Church resolution on BDS, and there are resolutions in other denominations coming forward this summer on that. And the United Church resolution has spawned a group called the United Network for Justice, which is very much dedicated to promoting BDS, the boycott, divestments, and sanctions within all of the churches. And so there actually is a lot of movement. And at our last forum, I can say now, because it's on the front pages of the church newspapers, at the last forum, we, in response to the Kairos Palestine document, we invited representatives for the first time from Canadian Arab and Canadian Muslim organizations, national organizations. There was a preparatory meeting with 17 of them, and then 6 of them came to this regular meeting of the church house staff and church-related organization staff on the Middle East. And hopefully they will get just as much voice on the Middle East issues in the churches now. And even after the forum, we had a dinner, and the primate of the Anglican Church came. The Roman Catholic cardinal sent a delegate, as did the United Church moderator, the Presbyterian Church moderator. And this is the highest level meeting, I think, with any group outside of the church on the Middle East that's ever been had. Not even the lobby has had anything like this. So we're really making some good progress now in response to the Kairos Palestine document. It's going to take a lot of time to filter out into the public, and radio shows such as this are very helpful in getting the word out. But it comes from a deep theological commitment that we saw in the Kairos Palestine document, a deep faith commitment that God created all humans equal. Mm-hmm. And God loves everybody, even Palestinians, if you can believe it. You know,
yeah.
And sooner or later, when it gets down to the pews, this will become widely accepted as a natural course.
Actually, he chose his son to be Palestinian, Reverend.
Yeah, sure. Last time I read the Bible, that seemed to be the case, but it's hard to persuade some people.
Yeah, with many of the North American Christians. But, you know, I think you're right. I mean, people are waking up, and they really resent the underhanded pressure they put on them and calling them anti-Semites, although the churches promote, you know, justice and peace and love amongst people. But again, you know, sometimes some of them get terrorized by the lobby, and
so some of them do, and the lobby's very powerful. But I have to tell you that what happened last summer was that the lobby poured tens of thousands of dollars into the attack on the first two churches to have BDS resolutions, which were the Presbyterian Church in the United States and the Methodist Church in the United States. And they were successful so far only because they at the next Methodist convention they won't be, but they were successful with the Methodists the first time and only partly successful and partly failed with the Presbyterians. And then they poured tens of thousands of dollars into the effort in Canada, and we saw all the newspaper articles. You know, just to show you the bias, I mean, Shimon Fogel got the CEO of the largest organization that is really part of the Israel lobby, if not the Israel lobby itself, got an article in the Globe and Mail the day before the United Church vote. We, with several other organizations, Canadian Friends of Sabeel, initiated a letter signed by several Arab and several Muslim Canadian organizations, and the Globe and Mail hinted 2 or 3 times that they would publish it, but they never did because of the pressure of the lobby. But despite all that pressure, and despite the direct threats and accusations of anti-Semitism, the United Church passed the resolution by a vote of about 80%. Mm-hmm. You know, so Christians are being less and less terrorized by the lobby now, and I think in many ways we're becoming more and more sensitive to anti-Semitism, which is a good thing because it helps us as churches and Christians discern what real anti-Semitism is and what false accusations of anti-Semitism are as well. And
not to forget that Arabs are Semites also, so you know, sometimes they accuse us as Arabs and Palestinians of being anti-Semitic, which is...
Well, they even accuse Jews of being anti-Semitic and self-hating, and, you know, who, you know, all in an effort to squelch any possibility that peace might break out in the region.
Yeah, and silence the messenger, basically.
Well, exactly. And, you know, Canadian Friends of Sabeel's mission is to give voice to the voiceless in Palestine. And, you know, I think we've helped the churches with that as well, and let them speak out. And these silencing tactics just don't work anymore.
That's good. And, you know, there was a movement in the United Church, you know, previously they asked the Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They took it back last time, but they still themselves, which is really not principled on their part, to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, because 25% of Israeli citizens are not Jews. And if they want
but you see, this... Yeah, and what happens is these tactics backfire on the lobby so often. What happened was the result of that, which didn't sit very well with people, was that senior people of the United Church went to look for themselves. And so they went to Israel, they went to Palestine, they went to look for themselves, came back with this report that suggested how outrageous it is that they had said previously that Israel is a Jewish state, and it ended up in the boycott resolution. And what's happening more and more, because the lobby has no sound arguments, they have no intelligent arguments, just these crazy accusations of anti-Semitism. It's coming. They're getting a lot of blowback, and it's backfiring on them now in the churches.
Oh, that's good news, and we thank you for reporting on that. And really, I just want to quote part of the letter you sent to this office, the Canadian Office of Religious Freedom. You quoted respected Palestinian spokeswoman Hanan Ashrawi, a Christian, who's a Christian, she's from Jerusalem, I believe, insisted, and I'm quoting, there should not even be a question of needing permits to visit one's own city. East Jerusalem is the occupied capital of Palestinian people, and freedom of worship is basic human right for all of our Christian and Muslim citizens, a right which is being systematically and increasingly denied by a foreign occupying force, that is Israel. And again, this is really important to draw parallel. You mentioned apartheid, that Christians need a permit, like in South Africa, basically, to go visit even their churches or their holy sites. I'd like you really to keep us informed of what's the response of this office, religious office, and we will keep our listeners informed because I'm not really very hopeful that they're going to do something about it.
Well, we'll see, and we certainly will let you know about every response we get or don't get.
Yeah, okay, that's great, Reverend. Do you have a final message to our listeners?
Yeah, the final message, and it was contained in our statement as well on Good Friday, would be that we spoke out about these particular violations against Palestinian Christians. The same violations affect Palestinian Muslims, and that Palestinians are one people, and they're one people whether they are in Israel, whether they're under occupation in the West Bank, whether they're refugees in the West Bank or Lebanon, or in prisons in Israel, or in Vancouver or Ottawa or Melbourne or Washington, and that because of that, these Israeli violations affect all Palestinians, regardless of whether they're Christian or Muslim, and that on the ground, the Christian presence is so essential, and no one realizes this more than Palestinian Muslims, that both Christians and Muslims are the integral fabric that make up Palestinian society.
Yeah, with a small percentage of Palestinian Jews also.
Well, with those who are willing to call themselves Palestinian Jews, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great, and it was really a pleasure talking to you, Reverend Assali. And keep up the good work. And really, we appreciate all the work you are doing in the Canadian Friends of Sabeel. And have a good night.
It's our privilege. Thank you for having me this evening, Hannah.
Thanks.
And that was Hannah Kawas speaking with Reverend Robert Assali from the Canadian Friends of Sabeel. We'll now have excerpts of a statement by Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh from the Bethlehem area, commenting on the Easter holiday and the restrictions on Palestinians, both Christians and Muslims. Today in Bethlehem, sunny and warmer than usual by 10 degrees, is Easter Sunday. It is a Sunday where Christians following the Western calendar celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. I am certainly troubled, as most Palestinian Christians and Moslems are. We are troubled because we cannot even get to our churches and mosques in Jerusalem. Palestinians who are already in Jerusalem are being pushed out as Israel continues its relentless program to make the city Jewish, whatever that means. On this Easter, Israeli Jewish soldiers even defiled the Church of the Sepulchre, where tradition holds that Jesus was crucified and also buried. We are troubled because just yesterday we commemorated Land Day, and our commemorations were marred by Israeli violence. Even trying to cling to the memory of our lands stolen from us is a crime in the apartheid state of Israel. A law in the Knesset tried to stop commemorations of the Nakba, the catastrophe of ethnic cleansing of 530 villages and towns between January 1948 and December 1949. But this is just one of hundreds of racist discriminatory laws that make Israel the quintessential apartheid state. Meanwhile, the government of Mr. Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas, approved the Palestinian Authority, PA, budget of $3.8 billion that Israeli papers said shows its continued dependence on Israel and the U.S. The PA, in the meantime, have sentenced more people to jail for expressing dissatisfaction with the status quo. In one case, even sentencing a person for 6 months in jail simply for clicking like on a Facebook post that criticized and critiqued the PA. There is indeed a grave danger that we will have, if we do not have already, a police state serving Israeli interests. Decent people in Feta must take note of what is being done in their name, lest we have a village league scenario. But back to our main bane and what brought us the disastrous Oslo, the Israeli occupation. Bethlehem, that Obama visited for 20 minutes, is still besieged and stripped of its lands. It is still isolated from its sister cities of Jerusalem and Nazareth. We still have a permit system, worse than the one practiced in apartheid South Africa. And we still have Palestinian children being jailed and tortured. So I think what Jesus would do now, if he was still physically walking in these hills here, is that he would join us in the protests against the apartheid wall and stand in front of bulldozers uprooting olive trees and destroying Palestinian homes. He would also still be telling us to be hopeful, that the Son of Man will be brought to life again and that Palestine will be free again. We Palestinians do have some experience with resurrection. That was excerpts of a commentary by Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh from Bethlehem. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our final piece of music is by the legendary Lebanese singer Fairuz, called Old Jerusalem. And we dedicate this song to the Palestinian people's attachment to their land and their steadfastness in refusing to relinquish their rights to this land.
شوارع القدس العتيقة إيديهن الحزين من طاقة المدينة تاخدني وتوديني بغربة العذاب. كان في أرض وكان في إيدين عم بتعمر تحت الشمس وتحت الريح، وصار في بيوت وصار في شبابيك عم بتزهق، صار في ولاد وبإيديهم في كتاب، وبلاقي الكت ولاد صار الحق بفيت البيوت، والإيدين السودا خلعت الأبواب، وصارت البيوت بنطحة، وصارت البيوت بنطحة، بينن وبين بيوتن خاصر الشوك والنار، والإيدين السودا عم صرخ بالشوارع، شوارع القدس العتيقة، خلي الغني يصير عواصف وهدير، يا صوتي ضلك طاير زوبع بهالضماير، خبرهن عاللي صاير بلكي بيوعى الضمير، يا صوتي ضلك طاير زوبع بهالضماير، خبرهن عاللي صاير بلكي بيوعى الضمير.